Hey y'all, this is B Wendy Bob just stopping by to share some amazing news with you. If you've been listening to the podcast, then you may already know, but let me just let you know this today. I am now a published author. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Lord. I'm so thankful, so excited to share these resources with you. My first release is the book entitled Empowerment for You, Encouragement for Your Emotional and Spiritual Wellness. Listen, this book is filled with information, insight, inspiration, and specific tips and practical strategies for your emotional and spiritual wellness journey. If you have not gotten this book, I encourage you to purchase one for you. Purchase also, give one as a gift to another sister of yours or to someone else. It is available on Amazon, and I definitely want to hear how this book is blessing your life and adding value to you. My second release, most recent release as of November 2021, is a workbook. Oh my gosh, y'all. It is called the Empowered to Empower You Reflection Workbook. I'm so excited about this workbook. And I know that for those of you who enjoy engaging in self-awareness activities and you love engaging in journaling and reflection, you will enjoy this workbook. It's actually based on the podcast specific episodes where I had dynamic guests. So this workbook is for you too. Both of those resources are available on Amazon. If you have any questions, you let me know and I will be able to answer them for you. Also, will you do me a favor? If any of the episodes has added value to your life, has transformed some things for you, or have just provided you encouragement, will you provide a rating and a review of the podcast or send me a message? I would love to hear from you. I want to hear how the podcast is really enriching your life, and I want to hear how things have changed for you, or you maybe how a specific episode has encouraged you. So I would love to hear from you. Send me a message, complete a rating or review. If you don't know how to do that, just send me a message. Let me know. You can do that by emailing me at bwendy.bob@outlook.com or info@bwendy.com. You can also send me a message on empowered, the number 2 serve on IG. I look forward to hearing from you, and I want you to enjoy the rest of the show. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Empower to Empower You podcast. This is your lovely host, Miss B. Wendy Bob. I'm so glad that you decided to join in this morning or this afternoon or whatever time that it is where you are. I hope that you are doing well and feeling well. Previously recorded episode was episode number 93, which was being single and walking in purpose with Mrs. Tarnice Compere. I really am so excited about this segment this morning or today. And I also just want to remind you that Empower to Empower You podcast is about all things Jesus Christ and mental health. So all of you are welcome to listen. Today, I'm super excited. I'm super humbled and honored. I get to have a conversation with Mrs. Whitney Owens. Miss Whitney Owens, I got to also be on her podcast last year, whenever it was, 2019 or 2020, I don't remember. But I'm so humbled because Miss Whitney Owens is busy. Busy is an understatement. She is a licensed professional counselor and owns a growing group practice in Savannah, Georgia. Along with a wealth of experience managing a practice, Whitney has an extensive history working in a variety of clinical and religious settings, allowing her to specialize in consulting for faith-based practices and those wanting to connect with religious organizations. So I am so honored to have Miss Whitney Owens here. She's going to share more about herself and how she serves. And so, Miss Whitney, welcome to Empower You podcast, and tell us a little bit more about you and how you serve.
Well, Belindy, thank you so much for having me on the show. And it was a pleasure when I had you on my show. I think we talked about how to find your ideal client. And I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that. Yes. And so I'm glad to return the favor and be on your show today. So I live in Savannah, Georgia, and most people have heard of Savannah. We have a rich history here. So if you've never visited, it's a great city to come to.
Me
I
too.
love being in Georgia because we've got the beach and the mountains. So I've got the
Mm,
beach just about 20 minutes from my house. That's nice.
nice.
I have a husband who's also a minister, and then I have two little girls that are ages 8 and 5, and they keep me very busy. You said I do a lot of things. They make me do a lot of things, right? So they keep me busy, but I have the group practice. We actually just hired another clinician last week. So that was really exciting. We're cash pay, but also have a faith-based component in our work. And then, like you said, I do the consulting with Practice the Practice. Specifically, love talking about just kind of the benefits and challenges of starting and growing businesses with a faith component to them. So that's what I do.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I love listening to your podcast. I actually need
Thank
to
you.
catch up on some additional episodes. So we'll definitely get you to talk about that before you leave today. So, because you mentioned the faith in practice component, if you can talk about the benefits and the challenges of incorporating or adding faith as a component to the counseling practice, whether you are a counselor or a social worker or just kind of working in that field of helping people heal.
Yeah, definitely. I think the first part is figuring out, how do you want faith to be a part of your work? Like, do you
Mhm.
want it to be a full influence in everything that you do as a therapist, or do you want it to be kind of more covert, like behind the scenes? This influence is what I do, but it's not everything I talk about, not everything I do. So kind of to give you a practical example, we're talking about in the clinical sense, you have some therapists that would call themselves Christian counselors, but they may not market that way. They are Christians. They are also counselors. If a client comes in and talks about faith, they talk about it, but they wouldn't necessarily bring it up in every session. But then you might
Mhm.
have the other range of therapists that would be very overt about their faith, and they pray with their clients in every session, and their website makes it very clear that they're Christians. And so you've kind of got both sides there, and trying to figure out, where do you want to land in there? I think that's the first big question to figure out. What kind of
Mm.
clients do you want to see? Do you want to see all faith-based clients? Do you want to see some faith-based clients? Maybe, at least for me, I love working with jaded clients. Like, we have a lot of college students here in Savannah, and a lot of them grew up in painful situations, or parents that forced them to go to church. So if I had marketed overtly as a faith-based therapist, they would have never come in my door. But I love
Mm.
working with those clients. So the way that I market my practice is not as so overt as to be able to meet the needs of both types of clients. But it all starts in how you want to make that a part of your work. And then from
Mhm.
there, figuring out who your ideal client is and where do they land faith perspective, and then
Mhm.
marketing your practice in such a way to bring in that ideal client.
That's awesome. I love that you said that in terms of being able to be clear of who you want to serve and how you want to serve them, and also how you want to make sure of your own identity as a
Mhm.
Christian, of serving the clients for sure. Let me take a step back, Whitney. How did you land here? How did you land in this? No, knowing that this is the niche that I have, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to serve, this is the purpose, because I'm sure you're driven by purpose to be able to do this. So talk a little
Yeah,
bit about that.
such a good question. Yeah. So I decided to be a therapist right after college, and just going through my own stuff. That's where most of us figure it out,
Yeah.
right? And we want to serve. And I also found faith to be a very important part of my life, and wanted to serve God in some way. I actually thought I was going to be a youth pastor for a while. I went and visited some seminaries, and then that just didn't feel right. And through long story, found out that I felt like the Lord was leading me to be a therapist. So that's when I went to
Mm,
grad school. I went to a faith-based school called Richmont, which is actually in Atlanta and Chattanooga. It's a great
okay.
program, had a wonderful time there. Um, and then I, did what a lot of us do, worked at agencies, finally found a practice that could be a part of a group practice, worked on my hours. And then when we got to Savannah, I just couldn't find a job. When we moved here, I tried to make whatever connections I could, still didn't work. So I started a practice, hopes it would work, and it did. And then I just found myself wanting to do therapy with a faith-based component. Like, I didn't feel like I could do it without that. Like, that's just a part of who I am. And being in the Bible Belt, we get a lot of Christians that come in. And my first connections, because my husband moved here to be a pastor, were with Christians, and with churches. And so that's kind of how the groundwork started. And we kind of went from there. I would say about 30% of our clients, overtly Christian, talk about it in session, and then some don't. And then from there, as I was doing my own consulting, right? Because I started growing a group practice. And I'll tell you, if you're ever going to invest in consulting when you're growing a group, is a really good time to do that. And so I got a consultant, and we weren't really talking about faith-based stuff though. And that's okay. But I found that I had different challenges in hiring and thinking about pay and thinking about the way I wanted to serve my community that was different than people who don't consider their faith to be a part of that. And I started looking to see if there were any consultants out there that were doing that kind of work, and I couldn't find any. Now, there are definitely consultants out there that are faith-based, but they don't make that their niche, and they don't market that. And I thought, we need somebody doing this. I didn't want that to be me necessarily.
Yeah.
But how the Lord works. It's a little bit of Jonah where he's like tapping me on the shoulder every day, and Whitney, pay attention. And finally like knocked me upside the head. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And God's really blessed it. So
that is awesome. I love how it's interesting how he just orchestrates the details of our lives. Something you saw a need, and then he was like, yep, you're the one to meet the need, daughter.
Yep.
That's awesome. So in terms of in your work as consulting with faith-based practices, you mentioned one of the challenge, the important piece of number one, we need to be clear of who we want to serve and how bold do we want to state our faith, and letting people know that that's the work that we want to do. Talk a little bit more about there are people who struggle in the boldness because they're struggling in their own spiritual identity. Faith means something different for other people. For me, and I believe for you too, when I say faith, I'm talking about faith in Jesus. However, would I work with somebody who doesn't believe in Jesus? Absolutely, because I believe that this is an opportunity to share the love of Christ and to be able to see them as humans first, and they still need help, right?
That's
and so how let's say that what have you seen in terms of there are counselors who struggle in their own relationship with Christ, and they know that there's a need. There are people that are looking for something other than cognitive behavioral therapy. And I believe in CBT, but they're struggling in their own relationship, and they feel like, I don't know enough, or I'm not strong enough, or I don't know the word. I don't know. Do I have to get a certificate? Like, what do I do? What would you say? What do you say?
Yeah. Okay. You brought up so many good things here. I mean, real quickly, the idea of a Christian counselor, you don't have to go get some certificate and spend a bunch of money to get it. If you are a Christian and you're a counselor, you're a Christian counselor. Now, do I think you should get some training ethically on how to integrate your faith appropriately in therapy? Absolutely. But there's not some certification that you have to get to call yourself that. But I'll also say that those that feel uncertain, those that feel like they don't have it all together are the very ones that God uses, right? I mean, those are the people I think about when I'm in my weakest moments. Sometimes that's when I'm the best therapist, because I'm vulnerable and I'm with them in their pain. And this is going to sound, well, this is a little intense, but I'll share this story with you because it came to me while we were talking. When I was in college, we had a healing ministry at our campus ministry. I went to the University of Georgia, and I went to the Wesley Foundation. And one of the ladies that was my mentor, her mother had cancer. And so we went to her house and laid hands on her and prayed for her. And at that moment in my life, I was in a really weak moment. I had been dating this guy that I thought I was going to marry, and we had ended the relationship. And I just felt so unworthy, like so inadequate. And I said that to my mentor. I'm like, I don't think that God's going to want to use me to heal your mother. Like, I don't think I should go pray for her. And she said, what? Like, that's the very place God wants us to be to do his work, is when we lay ourselves aside. And I remember laying my hands on her, and it felt so much power in that moment of weakness. Right. And that's, I think that's a good example of us as therapists and how God uses us. Not that we put our problems on our clients, but we let God work through us.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. When we are weak, he is strong. He does I hear people talk about they rave and they put their confidence in their talents and abilities, and I just believe that our confidence is in what Christ has done and what he does through us. He
Yeah.
works through us. We are his vessels for him to work
Mhm.
through us to be able to help people. So this is such a powerful story. Thank you for sharing that for sure.
Mhm.
Because I remember one of the things my bishop said is not about the anointing, it's not about the talent or the gifting, it's about the anointing. The anointing is what makes the difference.
Mhm.
I don't care about being the best at anything. I just want to be I just want God to use me in the work that I do so that people can see Christ. That's
That's
really
right.
what. Yeah, yeah. So go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. And well, that's a big part of my hiring process, actually, that people think is
Okay.
not traditional. I care a lot more about your character, your
Mm.
humility, your kindness, the fruits of the spirit. I care a lot more about those qualities than your skills as a therapist. I could have
Oh,
somebody apply and have 30 years of DBT experience, and that's great. But if you're arrogant, I don't want you at my practice. I would much rather have someone who's humble and maybe has a couple of years experience, because so much of the work we do is about the therapeutic relationship, bonding with people. In fact, research shows that the therapeutic relationship is 40% of the healing process, and only 15% come from the treatment methods that we use. And so when I'm
mm-hmm.
talking to people about hiring, those are the kind of things that I'm looking for.
That's so good. How do you do that? That's so powerful. I've never heard anybody say that. How do you, I'm sure you have systems in place to screen those people out through interviews and through the power for the spirit of discernment. I'm sure for sure, because you have to see through all of that, see through all of the things that they're saying. So how do you do that?
Well, I'm not perfect at it whatsoever. Yes, some of it is the discernment. I'm a very gut oriented person, so I can just feel it sometimes, and I
Yeah.
definitely get someone else to help me. So my assistant's a big part of the hiring process. In fact, we
Hmm.
do a phone screening with candidates at the very beginning, and she does the phone screening, fills out a Google document, sends it to me. Um,
Hmm.
and one of the questions we ask, because you can't hire someone based on faith, that's discrimination. But we
Okay.
also don't want to hire people that don't find this work enjoyable. Like, you wouldn't want to have a substance abuse practice and hire someone that has no experience with substance abuse or hates working with it, right? So we
Right.
just explain to people that our origins are with a faith-based practice, that Whitney originally, had these connections with churches. So some clients call and want a faith-based perspective in their counseling. Do you feel comfortable working with these clients?
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
they usually make it pretty clear if they are or not
Okay.
in that
That makes a lot
question.
of sense.
And
Yeah.
then if the phone screening goes well, and then we do the actual interview, I do the interview. And we talk about that again in the interview, just to make sure that they feel comfortable with the clientele they'll get. And of course, we cover a lot of other things as well. And
Yeah.
then really praying about it, thinking about it, talking to my assistant about it. Like, for example, one of the candidates we had recently, this broke my heart, because she had the best clinical skills. Like, I loved her psychodynamic approach, because I don't find that very often. I'm very psychodynamic. But she not one time asked me how I was doing. She didn't ask how the practice was. She didn't ask questions about this team. All she did was
Mm.
talk about herself and her own ability. And so it was discouraging, right? I was like, oh, if only
Yeah.
you were thinking about somebody else, like, you would have been great,
Yeah.
but I can't
Yeah.
hire someone that doesn't do that, because how are they going to treat their clients, right? Are they going to
Absolutely.
talk to their clients about how they're doing, or they're just going to talk about the skills they have?
That is so important.
Mhm.
So, what are some other challenges before we talk about the benefits of incorporating faith? There's so many things as you're talking that somebody needs to think about, right? And to consider. Because at the end of the day, the work needs to be the work needs to be not just compliant with our ethical, but it needs to be pleasing to God, right?
Mhm.
So, what are some other challenges that you've noticed when it comes to incorporating faith as a component to the practice?
Yeah, well, it's definitely going to influence business decisions. And
Yeah.
then some business decisions may not seem rational to other people, but from a faith-based perspective, you have to trust God. So I'll give you an
Yeah.
example here. We are in this beautiful building right here at the corner of 37th and Bull Street here in Savannah, and it's 2 stories. And when I started, it only had the top. And we have 3 offices. One was rented out by another therapist. So then I had 2. And when I started my group practice, that was fine. But then we got to 6 people. And you can imagine 2 offices and 6 people, a little crammed. But I strongly, like within myself, knew that we were going to get the bottom and that I needed to just wait. And everyone thought that was ridiculous, right? Like, why would you wait? You've already grown, get some more space. And I will say at one moment I did start looking at other space, but I just kept feeling like the bottom was going to open up. And then as soon as like you feel like you can't wait any longer, the landlord called and said, the people downstairs are moving. Would you like the downstairs space? And I was like, yes. Of course, that was 2 weeks before the shutdown. So we moved in and then the shutdown happened, but you know, it all worked out.
Yes, that is awesome. We have to trust. You have to, again, it goes back to personal relationship, personal relationship with Christ for sure, and having the confidence in knowing that he'll work things out and not being moved by what other people are doing or what other counselors are doing or how other people are scaling or, you know, this coach or that this, or, you know, just really being focused on what is your path, what is your lane, what is it that God has for you? Because if not, we can get so caught up in the trap of comparison and all the things that just kind of distractions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whether
One of
it's
the one
go
of the
ahead, go
other
ahead.
challenges that we have, I think, is money, right? Is how do we think about money? How do
Yeah.
we work in a kind way, but also find profits so that we can take care of our families? And so figuring
Yeah.
out how to talk about money yourself, not feeling guilty for making money. How do you talk to churches about money? Like when they're referring people to you, and then those people are like, well, how can you charge that? And you're thinking, well, you have no idea what the expenses are on this side, you know? And so there's a real challenge there with faith-based therapists talk in practice centers in general, and not feeling
Mhm.
that guilt and being able to talk about money appropriately, but also in a way that honors God. I love John Wesley's quote on this. He said,
Mhm.
make all you can, save all you can, and give all you can.
I love it. I love
Mm-hmm.
it. That just covers all the principles for
Mm-hmm.
sure. So I heard several challenges, understanding who you want to serve, how you want to serve, and being whether you want to be overt, whether you want to kind of do in the background scenes. I also heard you say just business decisions, the impact on business decisions, who you hire, and what your hiring process is going to be if you're going to be a therapist that wants to have a group practice and work with other therapists, as well as money. And just talking about money can be very, very difficult, but especially difficult as a Christian because of so many rules sometimes that people have in their mind or things that they've been taught. And so that complicates things. Let's switch gears to talking about the benefits. You know, what are some benefits? You know, you talk, and if you can, therapists that work with you, are they only building a group practice, or do you have some that have solo practices and wanting to incorporate faith in their idea? So just talk
Yeah.
about the benefits on that.
Yeah. Well, as far as the types of people that I work with, I just like my practice, I actually consult people that are faith-based and people who aren't faith-based. Yeah. I love
Nice.
working with all of it. And then when I do work with faith-based owners, they kind of fall more into a couple of categories here. Some are solo practice owners who just kind of open the doors, but they really need help on the marketing piece. So how do I do copyright that meets my ideal client? How do I build a website? How do I go out to churches and talk to people about the work I'm doing? How do I build a business? I actually run a mastermind group every 6 months specifically for this category. And oh my gosh, I'm just going to share a story. I got an email yesterday from one of the girls in my group, and I had been thinking about her because I thought she'd be a good candidate for the group. I reached out to her. I didn't really know her very well. And she was like, okay. And she had about 5 clients when she started. Now her
Mhm.
practice is almost full. And let's see, the group's been going since June, July, August, September. So what, 4 months? And now she's almost
Uh-huh.
full. And she wrote back to me. She said, the whole time I prayed that God would give me what I needed to make house payment on November 1st, because her husband had been paying the house payment. She wanted to be able to do it with her business, and she made her payment on November 1st.
Wow.
It was so cool. So
awesome.
I love working with that group. Most of them do come to me because they're sitting at like 5 or 6 clients and they really need to be able to grow so that they can take care of their families. And so we do that in the mastermind. And then I also work with people that have a group practice, the hiring process, like that's kind of sticky and working through that as a faith-based practice. But also right after they've had their first few people, how do I set up systems and processes in my business so that it functions without me being such a part of it? How many clients should I work with? How do I set my rates? All those kinds of questions. So we help with that as well.
That's great. That's great. So what have you found is the additional benefits of
Yeah.
incorporating in practice?
Yeah. Well, just like with anything, whenever we make the Lord part of what we do, that's a benefit, right? We experience his peace, his love, his excitement, like his passion for the
Yeah,
work that we do. And knowing that he's with us when we make decisions, right? I mean, I need that.
I do
um,
too.
but but
Yeah.
boy, doesn't our practice make us a better person? Like
Yeah.
the Lord uses my business to do his transformational work within me.
Yes. Oh, that's powerful. The Lord uses my business to experience to do his transformational work in me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the other part that's so beautiful about it is
Mhm.
that our work becomes ministry.
Mhm.
So I don't have to, when people talk about ministry, sometimes they think about, well, I'm not a pastor. I'm not preaching the word. I'm not a deaconess. I'm not an usher. I'm not this, but we get to do ministry through the work that we do. So that's awesome to have the intersection of faith and mental health for sure. Okay. Okay. Well, let me switch gears, Whitney. I know that you sent me a download, and if you want to talk about that for a second, the common pitfalls connecting councils and churches.
Yeah. I wanted to offer a freebie to people today. And
Yes,
so
thank
I
you.
think it's if you go to practicepractice.com/faith and practice resources, you can get this
Mhm.
free download. I was just finding that there's some disconnect with counselors
Yeah,
and churches and the way we talk about things. So that handout goes through the 5 differences and kind of how do you handle that? How do you talk to churches about counseling, about money, those kinds of things.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that
Yeah.
for sure. So I want you to talk about how can people work with you? What's new? What's coming? I know that I don't want to go too far ahead, but I am so excited. I'll be joining the Faith and Practice conference in April, so I cannot wait to talk about that. But before we talk about that, talk about your consultation services, your one-on-one versus the Faith and Practice Mastermind. Who are the ideal clients, what people need to know, etc.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. So, yes, there's the option to do individual or group consulting, and the group consulting is called a mastermind group. And so that's when we get people with a commonality together, something they're working on, kind of in a similar phase of practice. And so, one of those,
Mhm.
like I said, is people that are solo practice owners wanting to grow their caseload. And hopefully, by the end of the 6-month group, you would have a full caseload, whatever that means for you, 20, 25 clients. One of
Mhm.
the other groups I do is more for people starting groups or people who already have groups and they really just want to work on their systems and processes for their group. So I have a mastermind for that as well. So I love running the masterminds, and the gift of being in a community is just so
Mm.
powerful that they grow together. You have accountability partners. We have conversations between groups. I wanted to also share another story since we're sharing faith-based stories here. One of
Yes.
my first mastermind groups, one of the girls had dropped in caseload, and this was right when the pandemic had happened. And she said, I don't know if I should keep doing this or if I should close my practice and work because I really got to take care of my kids and like maybe I should go back to agency work. And so I said to the group, okay, we've got 2 weeks before we meet again. I want everyone to pray for her and her practice and that God would make it super clear what she needs to do. And so
Mhm.
we all did that, and we came back the next time we met, and you better believe it, she had grown her caseload like multiple clients between the
Oh
two
my
weeks.
God.
And it was just such a testament to prayer and what God wants to do. And
Yeah.
you don't normally have groups where you can ask for prayer like that are also
Love
business
that.
oriented.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
that. Oh my,
Yeah.
I love it. So,
So
mhm.
those mastermind groups are going to launch again in January. I run them about every 6 months. And
Okay.
so if you're interested in that group, you can go to practicepractice.com/apply. And you can fill out an application and just check the boxes for working with me in my mastermind groups. And then if you have questions, feel free to email me, Whitney@practicepractice.com. Would love to kind of help answer questions about that. And, I always do a pre-consulting call with people because I don't want anyone joining the group that it's not going to benefit. And I'll be honest, sometimes I tell people this is not the best fit for you and where you're at, and here's what I recommend. So I really make sure that the group has a good dynamic.
Great, great, great. So for the person who is a solo practitioner, just getting started, opening their doors, they're interested in incorporating faith in their practice, definitely could benefit calling you or connecting with you. And also for the person who is thinking about maybe opening a group practice, or they maybe are running a group, but they're just struggling with clients or just processes or systems, maintaining the right staff, hiring the right staff, wanting to incorporate faith in their practice, definitely could benefit from your services as well. Is that what I'm hearing?
Oh, yes, yes. And I'll say there are a couple of people that do the solo mastermind that have consistent clients, but they just feel overwhelmed. Like they need some help managing their client load, finding systems to make things easier, hiring an assistant. So sometimes we have, like, I had one person at a full caseload, but she hired an assistant and started a podcast and found ways to manage her time better while she was in the mastermind group. So sometimes I have people like that as well.
That's so good. So talk about and you said you have a new mastermind starting in January.
Yep. So I'm planning to do two. And so one will be for solo practice owners, and the other one will be either for established group owners or people who are starting groups. I try to tailor the groups depending on who's interested and what the dynamics are, but that's usually how it kind of plays out.
Nice, nice, nice. What just is random, but what do conversations sound like for you and your groups or your counselors about burnout or self-care, or what does that sound like in terms of the recommendations? And even for you, because you're a wife, you're a mom of two young girls doing the work, serving people in the capacity that you are in. So what does that look like for you? And also, what does it look like in terms of conversations when it comes up for your counselors?
Yeah, it's a good question. We actually had staff meeting yesterday, and I had everybody rate where they're at with a number of 1 being I'm so burned out and 10 being I'm doing great. And so we just went around and shared kind of how we were doing. So I think talking about it is the number one thing, that you don't have to be ashamed of not doing well, or be happy that you're doing well, and talk with other people and help each other. When we shared that, one of the girls was like, well, I'm a 9.9, or she was doing really well. And she said, and I'm here to help. Let me know what I can take off your plate so that you can feel better. And, so I love that group dynamic with the group practice, is we're helping one another. And that we definitely are talking about that in the mastermind, working a lot on how can we take things off our plate so we can do the things we love more. Because that's a constant conversation that we're having, and the importance of really taking weekends or your days off to rest and not work. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, I'm going to check my email, I'm going to do this thing, and you've got to cut it off at some point if you're ever going to rest and enjoy your time with your family.
And what does that look like for you as well?
Definitely stopping checking emails for sure. I do sometimes work a little on Fridays, but I mostly take Fridays off. And try to spend it with my kids, because my husband works all day on Sunday. We try to have Friday as also kind of a weekend day that we can spend together. And really the importance as a mom of having help. Like, it's okay if you need to hire someone to watch your kids. And like yesterday, my nanny was there and I was taking a nap. And that's okay. Like, I think a lot of people would feel guilt about that. It's like the nanny is unloading the dishwasher and doing the laundry, and I'm like snoozing in the other room, but I needed that time.
There are so many times, well, I have learned the power of napping. Okay. Like there are so many times where, if I have a cancellation or something happen, I am so grateful that I can just go and lay down, because I work mainly from home. But I work from home. Everything is 100% at home now. And so I can just go and take a nap just to help me to feel more energized. And I'm so thankful, like, Lord, thankfully, I'm at the point where if I get a cancellation, I'm like, yes, let me go lay down. I'm not allowing this to freak me out. I'm not concerned about finances. I'm just really grateful for the opportunity. It doesn't happen often, but grateful for the opportunity to nap. So definitely taking time to rest and relax is very important for sure. Yeah.
Yes, I think I'm going to do that today, actually. I have a break this
Yes.
afternoon. But I got a good sofa
Yes.
here at my office. So,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, I've got to come to Savannah just to see the beauty because it just sounds beautiful. So
well,
talk
let me
about your
know.
yes, ma'am. Sure will. Do you want to talk about your upcoming conference?
Oh, I love talking about the conference.
Yes.
So, the Faith and Practice Conference, it's our first one. I'm super excited. It's going to be on Jekyll Island, Georgia. And so, there's a lot of little islands on the side of Georgia. So, it's one of them. We're going to be at the Courtyard Marriott, and it has the largest pool on Jekyll Island, and it's right
Ooh.
on the beach with only the access to the beach is only for hotel residents. So it's got a lot of space and a lot of amenities. Like there's bike rentals included in your hotel, golf balls. If you or your spouse like the golf, they can come. They have beautiful golf courses at Jekyll Island. They also have a lot of eating and outdoor seating and games like, oh boy, I just went totally blank.
It's okay.
When you throw I can't believe it, the bean bags into the holes.
I don't know what it's called, but I know what you're talking
Cornhole.
about. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, they had cornhole and they had a like life-size Jenga board and like things like that. So anyway, it should be a lot of fun in the conference room. Literally, you can see the beach sitting in the room. So
Oh my
it's
God.
beautiful, and there's a lawn there. So we hope to have some time on the lawn as well. And then as part of the conference, we'll be having different tracks. One is faith in counseling. So it's how do we ethically integrate faith in the work with our clients, faith in business. So how do we have a business that adheres to our faith-based values? And then faith in action is what are some things we can do for ourselves, talk about self-care, but also with our clients that incorporate faith. So we'll have some yoga and a yoga instructor on the beach. One of the speakers is going to do how to do the prayer of Francis de Sales and how to do it for yourself and with your clients. So I am really excited about it. We are limiting it to 100 just because of the space, but also because of COVID. And let's hope we keep going in a good direction. But if something happens, we'll have a smaller conference and a lot of outside space as well. So just trying to manage all that. But the conference is going to be April 21st to the 24th of 2022. And if you're interested in tickets, you can go to practicepractice.com/faith and practice conference to learn more. And you can sign up for the waiting list. And then you'll get an email when the tickets go live. We did a pre-sale, which I know you'd gotten a ticket then. We did a pre-sale about a month ago, and then we're going to release those in January.
Nice. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to attend for sure.
Oh, we're glad you're coming. Yeah.
Yes, I'm gonna bring my mother with me. This is her birthday week, so she
Oh,
gets to be
yeah.
with me. Yes, I'm excited
Yeah, I
about that.
found that a lot of people are bringing their family, which I love. And you can even bring your kids. They even have a splash pad. I thought this was so cool. A splash pad where you hit the button and it goes off. So I was like, kids can control a splash pad. That's cool. So,
Wow, I love it. And then lastly, your podcast. You want to talk about that so people can
yeah.
connect to that?
Yeah. So I host a podcast called Faith in Practice Podcast, and it's to help you start, grow, and scale your faith-based practice. So mostly business kind of oriented stuff. We also talk about some clinical integration as well. And that comes out every single week. So I'd love for you to listen to that, rate and review it. And I love getting feedback. So if you're listening to the show, send me an email, let me know what you like and don't like. Because as you know, Belindy, it gets a little lonely doing podcasting. And so when you get feedback from people, it's super helpful.
Absolutely, it does. It does. Because you've been doing your podcast for how long with me?
It'll be 2 years in January.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you do it solo. I mean, you have guests, but you do it as a solo way, right?
Like I don't have a co-host. Is that what you mean? Correct. It's just me. And I've actually found that I don't know if you ever go back and do this. I go back and look at the stats on the shows. I've always thought, oh, if I have a big name, like I'll get a lot of listens, but that hasn't really been the case. I've actually found that the shows where I do a solo show or when I do consulting on the show, those are the ones that get the most listens.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm just glad. I can't wait to go back and catch up on some listens because I have so many podcast names that I'm trying to keep up with, but I definitely love yours for sure. Well, Whitney, is there anything else that I didn't ask you? Anything else that you wish to share for the person who is listening that maybe is feeling a little bit defeated. Maybe they want to serve, they're struggling with their purpose. Maybe they're thinking about, counseling, or maybe or maybe they have a counselor. Let's talk about that first. They have a counselor. They want to bring faith into the conversation, but don't really know how to bring faith into the conversation because they're not really sure how the counselor will approach this. What would you say to that? I have several questions, but what would you say to that individual who's listening to you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is your therapy, not the therapist's. And so if faith is
Mm-hmm.
important to you, just bring it
Yes.
in the conversation. If you need to get really awkward and go, hey, I don't know how to bring this up, but hey, can we bring faith into the conversation? Just say it and see what the
Mm-hmm.
response is. If the therapist is not willing to do that, then that's a concern for that person as a
Yeah.
therapist. Most therapists are trained and comfortable with at least having some kind of discussion surrounding faith.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I think about a client that I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait. Like I knew it was coming, but of course I wanted her to be the one to bring it up. And so when she said, I think I'm ready to bring faith in, I was like, honey, I couldn't wait. I was so excited to be able to do that with her. And so
Oh, I
that
love
is so
that.
important to do that for sure. Yeah. And for the person who is really feeling not as confident in their relationship with Christ, and they want to incorporate faith. And of course, we just answered that question. They just need to contact Whitney, practice of the practice.
Oh.
But what would you say is there any final things that you would say to that person?
Yeah, for the person that's feeling defeated, I would say practice acceptance and kindness to yourself. That it's okay. We all feel defeated at times. We all struggled. Even seemingly the strongest person in their faith is going to have hard days and times. And that's okay. And if you need to take a break from what you're doing, I know it's
Mm-hmm.
tough, but hey, it's okay to cancel your clients one day and say, I don't feel so great. It take time to rest and pray and think, go to people that are supportive and helpful for you. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you're feeling better, go back out at it, and also within the work that you do, let God empower you too. Like as you're doing it, we talked about that earlier, and the Lord will make it work and will give you what you need. And then you'll find strength because sometimes we actually get refreshed when we're doing the work, right? It's the Holy
That
Spirit.
is so good. That's so good. Yeah,
Mhm.
I love the scripture that says, "As we refresh others, we ourselves are refreshed." I love that. It's in Proverbs. I mean,
Mhm.
it's true. I get encouraged as I'm encouraging other people. And because he empowers us, I it's just, I don't know, it's just powerful because I'm not doing it on my strength. Because if we're doing this in our strength, my goodness, we would not make it. We would not be sane, you know. So that is such a powerful thing that you just said for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Well, are there any final gems that maybe something I didn't ask you, or any last thing that you want to share, Whitney?
I think we covered most of it. It's just been a pleasure
Yeah.
to, be on a show where we're talking overtly about our faith and,
Yeah.
being refreshed in that. And so I just appreciate you and your podcast that you're talking about it, getting it out there and helping others.
Thank you so much. Well, it's a pleasure to have this conversation with you. And y'all, I know that there's something that Whitney said that is such a gem and adding value to your life. So I'm really, really grateful and to be able to have her on the show today. And I'll be back next time with another amazing episode. Thank y'all for listening.